So, what is anxiety and why do we even have it? There's been so many times when I've had clients tell me, I wish I never had anxiety. I don't ever want to feel anxiety again. And while that might sound like a good idea in the moment, it would actually be not so good for us in real life. So, we do need low levels of anxiety and high levels of anxiety in certain situations. So, what does low level of anxiety mean? So, a low level of anxiety might mean you have a little bit of anxiety about maybe getting up in the morning on time for work, or maybe you have some anxiety before a test. And in those situations, you might notice the anxiety, but you might not. But what it does for you is it motivates you to do what you need to do so that you can be happy, healthy, and successful. So if you have that low level of anxiety before the test, you're going to study. And then studying usually yields doing pretty well on the test. Um, and the low level of anxiety for getting up in the morning allows you to get up on time. And if you didn't have it, you might not even get out of bed in the morning, or you would chronically be late and then you might get fired. So, like I said, the low levels, they're good. We need them. Now, the high levels of anxiety, what would that look like? So, that might look like increased heart rate. You might feel tense or on edge. You might just have like a bad feeling in your stomach or a stomach ache. And then you may have some like racing thoughts or some excessive worry. So those are just a few things that you might feel. That is not an exhaustive list, but those are some things that are pretty common. So those high levels of anxiety are also important in certain situations. So, for example, we want to feel high levels of anxiety in situations where we might be in danger. It's a survival instinct. We need that high level of anxiety to kick that fight or flight response into gear and to get us into a safer situation. So, for example, if you heard a loud noise and you were in a dark alley, you want a high level of anxiety. That's going to help you to get out of there quick and to keep yourself safe. If you didn't have that anxiety, the fight or flight would never be um, it would never be triggered, and then you might either move too slowly to keep yourself safe or not move at all. So we do need the high levels of anxiety as well. Now, when does the high level of anxiety become a big problem? So it becomes a problem when it's happening too frequently or during situations where it's just not warranted to have that high level of anxiety. So, for example, if there was a spider in this room right now and my anxiety shot up to like a 10 out of 10, I'm screaming, I'm maybe running away. Um, that might not be warranted in that moment because let's be real, the spider's probably this big and it's probably about 20 feet away from me or so. And it's not going to actually harm me in any way as long as I don't get too close to it, right? So in that situation, that high level of anxiety is probably not warranted. And the other time that these high levels of anxiety can become a problem is when it stops us from being able to do some of the things that we really need to do. So if I was so anxious about driving a car that I never got in the car and I couldn't go to the grocery store or do the things I needed to do to feed myself, to accommodate my basic needs, that would be a problem. Another example might be if I was so anxious about going to the doctor that I never went and I even avoided it when I was really sick, that would also be a big problem, right? Because that then I'm putting my physical health and my well-being in general in jeopardy. So that's when it kind of becomes a problem. So how we respond really matters, right? It really matters how we respond to our anxiety. The number one thing most people do and want to do and have the urge to do in the moment is to avoid. Now, that is so normal and the natural response. Our body is actually telling us, don't do it, don't go there, avoid. And that is actually the worst thing we can do. So, what happens when we avoid is we're teaching our brain and our body that whatever that situation is danger. So, for example, if it was like the car, we would start associating the car with danger. And that's a bad thing because every time we get in the car, we see the car, we're having that emotional, high intensity, anxious response. So we've conditioned ourselves now to think car equals danger, which we don't want to do. The other thing is the anxiety just continues to grow the more that you avoid whatever the situation or thing is that you're anxious about. So, what do we do? Well, we want to, first of all, we don't want to avoid, right? If anything, we just don't want to avoid. We want to confront whatever it is that we're anxious about. The other things that we can do are we can learn different coping skills or relaxation skills to help us in the moment to get through that anxious feeling. We could also learn ways to prevent the anxiety from getting that high or prevent ourselves from making the anxiety worse by controlling the thoughts that we have about it. So, when I feel anxious about a spider, we'll just go with that example. If I'm anxious about the spider, I might have the thought like, oh my gosh, is it coming over here? Oh my gosh, what if there's more? And then my anxiety hits the roof when I'm like, there's probably a nest in the wall and I'm gonna die. So that's just an example of how our thoughts can totally escalate a situation to be so much more anxiety ridden than it needs to be. So, by controlling those thoughts or learning ways to control them or manage your thoughts, can really, really help to prevent or reduce the anxiety in the moment. So, those are a couple of things. The last thing, of course, is you can always start therapy if you're feeling like you're trying different things and nothing is working. Therapy is always an option as well. So stay tuned. I'm going to be doing more videos like this. My next videos are going to be more about different coping skills that you can use in the moment to calm your body and calm your mind.